today, ladies and gentlemen. We're very grateful for all your help, and of course, first of all, thank you very much to everyone at the Lough Yacht Club for all your assistance in allowing us to erect this memorial. Now, my name, by the way, is Kenneth Bannerman. I'm the Director General, the founder and head of the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust, which is, to all intents, the world's first national airfield charity. We've got a very popular 3,000-page website, and if you just type in the letters ABCT, for example, you will find everything detailed there very easily. Now, one of the main things we do is that we erect commemorative memorials to the UK's disused airfields and everyone who served at them. So, therefore, first of all, may I introduce the historian, Mr. Michael Clark, who will give you a history of Killadeas Airfield.
Thank you very much. I think quite a number of the folk who are here will recognise me, and I do promise that I'm just going to say a few words. They cast one's mind back to the early part, or the late part of 1940, and there were a couple of very important historical events just before Christmas 1940. The first one was that an aircraft from RAF Killadeas, which was a relatively recently set up flying boat base across from the present day ferry boat port, flew over to look at a bit of water in the western part of Northern Ireland that looked on a map to be about the same size as Belfast Lough. That was the Broad Lough. They desperately needed access further into the Atlantic for aircraft, countering the German submarine campaign, which after the French had fallen in mid-1940, they were operating from Brittany. There were surface craft, German surface craft operating, etc. And things were very difficult in the North Atlantic during that part of the war. So they felt it would work, and RAF Killadeas developed 2 squadrons of Catalina flying boats, which were flown over with the very latest technology from the United States, and they flew them in here in early 1941. The planes flew in and landed in the bay, or Rosfat Bay, or up round the corner here in what we call the Manor House Bay. And the Catalina flying boats they came like 1930s motor cars with their own toolkit and their own instructions to the flight engineer on board as to how to keep them serviced. And they discovered that in Fermanagh the problem was rain. If you live here, you'll know what I mean. It has a problem with rain. So, developed a system along this shore, slipways, that they pulled the Catalinas up in under the equivalent of a farm shed roof over the engines. Just over between these boats that are moored over there, there's a big ring in the concrete where they were tied down. So those 2 squadrons firmly moved in here by March of 1941. And the next exciting thing that happened was that the Bismarck sunk the Hood. The Hood was the principal ship of the Royal Navy, and the Bismarck, a battleship, a very modern battleship built by the Germans, had sunk her, and she was being chased, and they had lost touch with her. So they said at the time. In fact, they had detected her signals, Morse code, and had decoded them, and they knew fine well where she was. But they didn't want Bismarck to know that they knew. So they sent 2 Catalinas out from here, told them vaguely, go look there and there, and they did, and they duly, quote unquote, found the Bismarck. Better still, the Bismarck saw them too, blamed them for finding her, and shot a few holes in them, and they scuttled back here and had a bit of a party up in the Manor House Hotel afterwards. She was sunk a couple of days later. As well as here, and you'll be going there this afternoon, there was another large air base up at Castle Archdale. This one developed further in 1942. It became an operational training base, which is where our first memorial stone comes to from behind me here, OTU 131. An operational training unit took individuals who had been trained as pilots, as air gunners, as wireless operators, put them together in a crew, and then they went out training as a crew in either a Catalina or a Sunderland flying boat for operational, actual wartime operations. And as a consequence of that, on the lands to the north of us here, right up round the Manor House, there was a huge base here with accommodation for very nearly 2,000 people. They were variously the instructors, the various people who were being instructed, etc., etc., etc. And there was a huge amount of wartime activity in connection with the Battle of the Atlantic between Castle Archdale here and St Angelo. And this is a little part of it. And it's well worthy of being remembered by the trusts, one of the trust stones. We have this little memorial to the OTU. That memorial actually was unveiled by a fellow called Bud Crooks, who you will guess was a North American. He was from Canada. And he was a pilot in a crew of a squadron of Sunderlands in the Royal Canadian Air Force, who rejoiced in the nickname Flying Yachtsman. So we made up a story, and that was because they had been based at the place it was going to be later on, Lough Yacht Club. It's not a very good story, but we'll do. So that's actually they were called the Flying Yachtsmen because everybody else was damnably jealous of the comfortable conditions that they had in a Sunderland flying boat. It was luxury as compared to something like a Wellington bomber or a Lancaster or even a Catalina. And Bud and his friends from those two squadrons, this was 20 years ago in the year 2000 and again in 2002. And at that time they were in their 80s. Many of those men have passed on. And he unveiled this little stone, and we have used it a lot ever since. We had a visit from another Canadian whose grandfather had been lost in a Sunderland in an accident, training accident. We think it was a matter of they were training in a new method of dropping depth charges to be more sure that they dropped into the water before the submarine could get away from under them. And they seemed to have dropped the depth charge too close to the surface. It spun, it bounced, and it exploded in the air, and the Catalina was lost. That girl was greatly touched by the opportunity. She left a wreath on top of the stone, and later on, when it withered, some of the members took it down the lake and cast it out on the Broad Lough to let it sink there. There are many other stories we have here with us. Joe O'Loughlin, who has researched a very great deal of this and is responsible for the list of the airmen lost. That's up on the board inside, and so on. And Joe, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you very much.
And Joe did a great deal of research work on all of these things. However, I have talked rather more than a few words, and thank you very much for the opportunity of saying a little bit about RAF Killadeas. I should point out one other thing. It's the control tower, etc., for aircraft movements from Lough Erne. All of them was on top of the castle building, or the big house at Castle Archdale. So that's why from time to time you hear it said, as it was said on UTV last night, that the Catalinas flew out from Castle Archdale. They were controlled from Castle Archdale, but they flew out from and were based here. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. That was a marvellous history. Great. Just to say as well, by the way, on a related note, you'll know the name, that we just haven't been able to do it just right now, although not for the lack of effort. But we're intending to also, apart from the unveiling at Castle Artsdale, similar memorial this afternoon at 2:30, we're trying to get one of our special memorial plaques to honour Bow Island Airfield, also known as Rock Bay, which was Killadeas' satellite airfield in the last year or so of World War II for number 131 Operational Training Unit. So we're on the case there. Hopefully it'll be not too long. Now, just otherwise to say again, thank you very much for Michael for his excellent speech. No doubt he and gentlemen here know absolutely everything and anything about the history. We've also carried out a lot of research ourselves. So naturally, if you need to ask anything about the history or anything like that, just do naturally contact me and my colleagues as well. Now, just as we say during our travels right across the UK, like we did yesterday at Ballykelly, all we just say to people is that within reason, looking at the big picture, just please within reason do all you possibly can to honour the UK's airfields, active and disused, help save, protect, honour them, and of course not forgetting all the personnel who've served at them and all their families. Enough to say this is absolutely hugely important beyond all belief, just for every single one of us in our daily lives. Without the UK's airfields one way or another, our lives would be at the very least severely diminished, if not impoverished. As we simply say to people, among so many other things, you can literally walk down the street and there are airfield links all around. It's not obvious, that goes without saying, but it's the lateral thinking involved in this. Jobs, facilities, services, everything and anything, even right down to our health. That's how important our airfields are. So just within reason, just do all you possibly can to help them, because after all they've done for this country and the entire world ever since they first appeared in 1909, it's about time that we all maybe did a bit more to help them. It's the very least that they, and not forgetting all the personnel and their families, deserve. And especially, as Michael was referred to, thinking about the more than 300 personnel here who sadly never saw peacetime. That goes without saying, incredibly important. Now, just before we unveil the memorial, after we unveil it, the chairman of the Royal British Legion Enniskillen branch will give an exhortation, and then if we could have, please, a 2-minute silence in remembrance of Killadeas Airfield and all who served here. So therefore, without further ado, we're very greatly honoured to be unveiling what is now ABCT's 163rd memorial. If you include others we've got delivered across the UK, it's already well over 200. We're going as fast as we can with this. And therefore we are greatly honoured to be unveiling this memorial to yet another of the UK's absolutely irreplaceable assets, in this case the one and only Killadeas Airfield. Thank you all very much.
They shall grow not old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we give our today. Thank you.